Everyone, let's get started.
All right, episode number 3.
Z, really glad to be back today in a more quiet room, but also more and more preparation as we progress throughout the weeks and months. I think today we have many great topics. Why don't you give us a little bit context, and I want to give the audience about why Harmony in the timeless community would like to join us.
Yeah, well, first thing first, it took Joe Rogan almost 3.5 years to get like a proper recording studio. So, we're only 3 episodes in. So, long way to go. But I think, we're getting a lot better in terms of preparing for the show notes and really kind of synchronizing our agenda. From my perspective, I think, I think for both of us, there's usually one or two center of gravity for the conversation out there. For me, it's always about social capital, right? And layering the very different technology primitives, the very different kind of a market trend, certainly, right? And kind of just reacting to and also proactively reaching out to different developers, how to actually make social capital more of a kind of a real concept, right? And for this week, given that all the announcement just in the past 3 months about AI, so for me, I want to kind of layer in like how does kind of AI and different agents can participate in this larger narrative social capital. And some of it will obviously there's huge Venn diagram of overlap in terms of like the option, the perpetual that Harmony's been kind of thinking about, because obviously it goes without saying AI has a huge role to play in the future of trading and DeFi, certainly, right?
I like that. So again, like this TGI format is not just a quick idea or whether we need a excuse to get beer and drink. Definitely not the necessary reason for me to see Z every week, or even with so much content that we share on Telegram already almost every day, multiple times a day. As I always say, like the journey of Harmony started because we came to Silicon Valley 1st. We were at Google first. We came out of Google to do startup first, and then become machine learning, become blockchain, become many of the new topics because we really, really is at it every day. And I really message Z like more than anyone because we share a lot of ideas that we overlap. And this we just come to a topic that we prepared for the audience. We have tens more other message that they will come back next week or like for the next many occasion. But let me set the topic for today so that Z can jump into it. I want to tell the timeless story one more time. I want to tell the bio, the founding, the journey, and I want to really tell it with all the context that Z actually prepared, right? Whether for an incubator like Y Combinator, or telling investor, or telling the new community and new people joining the first time. We give a lot of like visual and context, but at the end of the day, like Z really, really tell the story the best with a full like writing. And then we'll jump back to what I have been really researching, like really, really every day, many hours now. It's the story of Perpetual, if not derivatives in general on chain. And hopefully we'll come back to talk about AI and another topic that I prepared for the meme coins and meme coin Launchpad in particular. Just whatever we can touch on in an hour or two that the audience can get a glimpse of what we are working on every day and why Harmony and the timeless community may care.
Yeah. And I think to kind of really echo what you said, right? And I think I'm glad you brought it up why we're doing this. I think so much of the Silicon Valley narrative is like, oh, like usually for the audience who are listening, it's like by the time you hear about a particular project, usually it's like anywhere between 6 to 12 months when the idea is already kind of being developed, coded up, the user interface has been developed, the marketing, all that stuff, right? This is probably like, it's not even a Cambrian explosion. This is the primordial soup. This is kind of where ideas are being formulated, and a lot of the topics we talked about may not survive, in the sense that this is kind of where I consider like intellectual kind of a bantering. We go back and forth, we challenge each other, right? Not everything we say is going to make logical sense in the grand scheme of things. But in my opinion, this is actually probably the most exciting aspect of it, which is like, we're probably the most authentic self, where you're not afraid of being judged, and you're just kind of, hey, here's what's intellectually interesting. This is how I'm interpreting the larger world dynamic, right? And some of the ideas that you've been presenting in terms of like perpetual options, right? I think these are kind of like, it's so early, and rather than just like kind of dive right in, let's actually sound it out, right? And let the kind of the internet sphere kind of bounce back some of these ideas, right? And we do encourage people, whether you're on X, whether you're on YouTube Live, give us feedback, right? If you want to participate, send us some notes, right? We would love to incorporate, as we kind of get deeper and deeper into these kind of these ideal maze, right? So with that being said, Yeah, I would love to ask you just kind of, Stephen, like, I know like we do this weekly now, right? So this is Thursday as we're recording, June 20th. Can you guys kind of walk me through for this week, right? What are some of the kind of like one or two key things that really get your brain kind of fired up, you're excited and you want to learn more and share with the people who are listening?
Yeah. So this week, I think there are a lot of news happening and a lot of market movement. At the end of the day, we are not here to comment on the market, but to really ride the wave. So actually, last week we jumped on a lot more different aspects of the news and I talk about top 100 coins. That's the easiest way to track the market movement. I specifically said this week is TGI Infinity.
Yeah.
The story is timeless, not just the name, but like the adjective that it is the same story that I hear many times. I told for you many times. I'd like to hear again, not one last time, but like really today's like version of it. Same thing. The word perpetual by itself means like forever.
Right.
It really comes to that whether like this week we still care about the AI or some of the things that we're still digesting, so that next week we have the like good announcement and good the result that we can talk about. The absolute stuff that we're behind the door still need to work every day. Partnership that we are working hard on. If not community like feedback that we're working on, we just have a mini upgrade. Like there are many things that is on like our day-to-day work, right? And our good friend and our partner Layer Zero have a great launch with the tokens. There are a lot of things that we can comment on.
Yep.
On the other hand, it's really about having a great collaborator and great partner here, Z, that as much as the internet, and I read a lot of tweets and what's not, that I really appreciate having a friend, having a partner that of many years now we build up the context.
Yeah.
So that any idea, we really quickly snap and we jump to the next level.
Yeah. So I think I'm going to press you on a little bit, right? Because I know this week was fairly substantial kind of a milestone for you guys in the sense that you guys announced the hard fork, right? So do you want to just kind of give, because I know many people are listening, like I think you're still the center of gravity for a lot of the kind of the, where you're so bleeding blue, right? So do you want to just kind of briefly just kind of talk about like why such a significant thing? Because I know this just didn't happen this week. Obviously been kind of like months and months of actually doing development, right?
So we have the technical updates and some of the many validators are engaging already. I won't be talking about specific technical or some of the features. Suffice to say, the teamwork is working really hard, right? Since we founded the like project almost 6 years and counting ago, and my founding team and now Casey and so all taking on has been a great journey about how to decentralize, but at the same time me still committing to the project, but also like whether like many of the validators stepping up and many of the young team that we got on board last year, and Aaron as a partner still spending a lot of time both on the technical and the product side. I think we're doing great.
Yeah.
In terms of like, wouldn't say keep the light on, but the platform very much vibrant and hardest of all sustaining. And hard fork is never easy or like planned the way that we wanted it, but it requires huge amount of governance coordination. At the end of the day, like what the platform keep going is what people call the social consensus.
Yeah.
Right. When should we fork it? How to fork it? How to communicate? Who's the governance? I must say I'm not involved as in the technical and governance and even the like all the political features as like I was in the first year. But I really like to ask questions.
Yeah.
Want to make sure that the team is stepping up to be taking on the role. So that's our team vibe today.
So and I think the reason I'm kind of bringing this up is because I think one of my both kind of a compliment and criticism views. I think you tend to bring a lot of spotlight to whether your partners, right, and the people around you, right? But very rarely do you reflect the light back onto yourself, right? And the reason why I say it's kind of a soft layup for you to this because I think, in my opinion, right, I think the fact that you guys are broadcasting, that you guys are hard working, if that's not one of the strongest signal you can give to the community, right, and for many of the validators, and also the token holders, this is still a chain that's actually still being actively developed, right? Sure. There's still people actively working on this, right? And I think it is an important milestone, right? It doesn't, again, we don't talk about token prices or evaluation, but I think by every single line of code that's actually being put out there, that's the strongest commitment from the kind of a foundation perspective. And also this chain is still alive and beating, right? And then from that, I think, like you said, hard forking is probably one of the hardest things you can do to convince every single validators and all the kind of governance, right? So that means like hopefully this is just kind of a beginning of, hey, there's new exciting set of things and features that could be announced, which a lot of the, the stuff that you're talking about, like, in terms of, okay, what does hard forking have to do anything with like perpetuals and stuff like that, right? One is to say, hey, this chain is still alive. Secondly, hey, if we can actually get these validators to actually approve this, right? Then some of these new ideas, some of the DeFi primitives you're talking about, there stand to reason there's a greater opportunity to kind of bring it out to the larger community, right? And obviously, the metric is always about TVL, active trading volumes, right? And we'll talk more about that, right? And it's kind of like, from my perspective, we obviously been talking about like, how do we actually continue to get users to activate? And I think, one of our private conversations is basically, hey, what is the way to attract new users, right? And, you and I would briefly touch about, for us, we just, I think about a month ago, we just passed about 1.5 million users served.
Amazing.
And just for people who are listening, not just Steven, but really the Harmony community, I think you guys were really at the beginning of our journey. Because back in during the height of DeFi summer, this idea of a smart wallet that was pioneered by some of the earlier developer community within Harmony. By the way, smart wallet as a concept back in 2022, that was a novel idea. Most people would shy away from it, right? And then again, hindsight is always the best validator, right? And I think you had an insight to, hey, this is going to be a thing. Fast forwarding to 2024, I think it's no longer debatable, right? Now it's no longer just about smart wallets. It's more about how do you actually have native smart wallet built in at the protocol level, like layer 1, layer 2 level, right? So that's why this idea of native account abstraction no longer is a account abstraction, because for just kind of sidetracking to kind of more on the technical side, which is smart wallet as concept back in 2022, novel concept. Fast forwarding to 2023, Denver, Vitalik really decided that, hey,
I remember
Ethereum needs to support smart contract wallets. And then it was debated for about 5 or 6 months within the larger kind of a crypto community. And by Paris, when I flew out to Paris in July last 2023, I think the Ethereum Foundation decided to basically, hey, you know what? Account abstraction, ERC 4337, it's going to be a real thing, right? And then fast forwarding today, virtually, if you look at the lesson, like, I think it's close to 30% of the volume is actually generated through smart contract wallets now.
It's generating lots of fees.
Right.
By definition of smart contract, many of them, all of them executing Solidity and EVM, that is part of the transaction that really create the utility of the network.
Yeah. And I think the larger nudge, with Harmony is that, keep in mind, 4337 is an ERC. So it's not a mandate. It's not an EIP, right? So a native account abstraction is basically something that, I think there's a kind of an undercurrent movement to be, hey, let's actually make this a permanent thing, right? It's not just a recommendation. The R stands for recommendation, right? So now we're seeing that basically, we're hearing more and more in the grapevines that many of the layer 1s and layer 2s
for sure
are going to implement this. And for context, like Near and Polygon ZK and POS, they already have native account abstraction, meaning the benefit, again, I'm maybe being too long-winded, with native account abstraction now, no longer do you have to sign any transaction with a UA wallet or with a private key, because you can literally sign a transaction now, which is your Face ID or your fingerprint, right? So now, like, it's way easier to basically say, hey, you no longer have to have a MetaMask wallet and an account abstraction wallet. It could be just done in a single shot.
Absolutely.
So that will drive adoption, which kind of brings it back to the point where we're saying, hey, we're obviously still in an early conversation about, hey, how do we actually leverage some of the new users we've been acquiring, right? And how do we actually completely revamp the Harmony adoption narrative?
I think that's the core and the focus I think a lot about. As you said, right, not only the Ethereum network, but the Ethereum community and the EVM competitor networks, but like Base protocol in particular, make the whole smart wallet account abstraction the main, like.
That's actually one thing that I'm glad you brought it up, like, because that was actually Brian Armstrong did an interview. I think it was about a month ago. Smart account wallet, right?
It's specifically called as the key features. Coinbase Smart Wallet. Coinbase Wallet has been one of the leading wallet, and now make it smart to be the key point. And I think that will really disrupt like something like MetaMask, right? Something that many of the network coming to have to be the standard.
And this is just not like us bantering back and forth. I think one of the things that you asked me 3 to 4 days ago, like, hey, what happened to all the various different timeless wallets on iOS and App Store, right? And behind the scene, we have already started to merge our EOA wallet code base with the account abstraction wallet. For context, for people who are listening, like if you go to App Store and Play Store, there's like, and if you just like a month and a half ago, there was like 6 different versions of the Timeless Wallet app, right? We have multiple versions, but we decided, hey, you know what? I think this is the year we're going to say, hey, you know what? Let's just merge EOA, externally owned account. By the way, for people who are listening, I think sometimes we use this 3-letter acronyms too often.
I never do.
Right, TLAs. There are too many TLA, 3-letter acronyms, right? But MetaMask is an EOA wallet, meaning like all of your digital assets are secured by a private key, right? If you lose that, obviously everything's gone, right? And that is obviously very kind of scary proposition for many of the users. With smart contract wallet, you can actually add a number of different kind of security mechanisms, right? The underlying thing, you can still use a private key, right? But you can obviously use your biometrics. You can use like social logins, right? You can have multi-party kind of signing, right? So that's why the wallet is called smart. It's not just a cool marketing gimmick. You can actually have very different ways to authenticate and sign the transactions.
I like that.
Right? So Brian Armstrong talks about basically, if you're going to truly get to 1 billion users, which has been the Coinbase narrative, is that he's not going to hire like 1 million customer support. I lost my private key. How do I get it back? So it's
for compliance, for security,
exactly
for the real decentralization reason.
Right.
So I want to get to the Timeless, both the bio, the story, and journey a little bit. But let me quickly touch, as you asked me about like how our Harmony network, as well as my take on the market, right? I want to see what's your this week take on DeFi, right? Just so that every week you nudge me on a little bit about like really, I would say, catching up to the layer one many stories going on, right? And for me to really also appeal you a little bit about different DeFi ideas. And I think that's the same for me. It really took me a few years to say, let's really do something powerful about DeFi. What is your take on DeFi this week?
Definitely DJ and meme coins is something. I mean, and by the way, and I think my kind of perspective on DJ or meme coin has changed a little bit. I think historically it's always a pejorative. Because keep in mind that for people who are listening, like you and I, we came from I would consider like very traditional Silicon Valley background, right? Engineering, right? And then you work at like, Facebook, Google, Microsoft, all these kind of traditional things. So in general, you always kind of lead with utility, right? But the reality is what I kind of reminder to myself is that a lot of the big ideas, and especially in the context like blockchain, crypto, and DeFi, start off as a meme, right? Like for example, Jupiter, right? Start off as a meme, right? But if you look at the amount of volume they generate for Solana, you cannot argue it's no longer just a meme,
fair.
Right? So my general take is this. Actually, for example, and I'm also going to throw a nugget of gold here, which is like one of the most kind of successful DeFi activity this past couple of months, not just this week. It's been the success of DGen on layer 3, built on Base. And by the way, we're also working on Base for this summer, the Base hackathon.
Great.
So a lot of it is actually no longer just a meme in the sense that just like any good ideas, once you have enough people to buy in, right? As long as the founders and the communities are earnest, right? Meaning there's no malice. I mean, you can't guard against malice, right? If the starting point is not a rug pull, I think DeFi is a really good way to actually bootstrap. That's kind of another interpretation. Like I'm being more and more charitable with DeFi because historically for DeFi was like, okay, lending, these kind of make sense. Restaking or staking, that makes sense, right? Or swapping, those make sense, right? But once you get kind of some of the more derivative synthetic instruments, I tend to be historically I tend to be very, very skeptical. I tend to come to now. And that was actually one of our initial banters. Like, hey, Steven, are you sure you really want to get into this, right? Because the further up the Babylon Tower you go,
it's very
it gets a little more wobbly.
It's very much calculus and physics simulation and all the formula stuff, right?
Right.
And that's where I really also want to agree, right? There's a reason why I make sure that I put memes coin, Launchpad on the title. So I will definitely want to talk about that. On the other hand, to differentiate the decentralized part of the DeFi and the FI part of the finance, is the finance used for utility? Meaning, are we really making positive sum games here to trade, or just like from day one, no values? Don't try to be having anything other than a fun, even profile pictures or just a name that make fun of every of the prediction market, like the election candidate, to all the point that literally it was just a token that have no meaning but numbers, right? So we'll quickly come back to both. But I want to start off still with what I have learned, at least something technical about the perpetual part.
I'd love to hear it.
To set the tone, to also help some of the community from Harmony listening in to see what else are we learning this week. Both at the same time celebrate some of the timeless story of that we have built a social wallet, and our partner here really having great success, to the future, which many memes coin are just looking forward to a community and some of the coins that belong to. What can be I wouldn't say opposite of the spectrum, but what can be the technical and the utility here, that even though it does seem like a zero-sum game, what are the constructions and primitives that it turned out that's what the market needs, right?
Yeah. So let me, I'm going to, again, just because we should always treat every single week as like a new set of eyes, new set of ears, right? So let me just kind of ask you like a more probing way, right? Can you just kind of quickly explain the problem you're addressing with Perpetual, right?
So the Perpetuals are very simple, right? The bigger problem is, can people really do transactions without third party and on chain? But not just for like we're just swapping hands of transactional. I have some asset, you have another. We are swapping hands of a determined price. It turns out that you can also talk about not just about the things that you have on hands, but like if I put down some collateral here, would you let me make a prediction on the future price, on the particular dates, on the volatility, and on the risk? And if I have something that on the entire portfolio, I'm not just about being bullish about something, but a fully hedged out, balanced portfolio. So it has been, as we all know, $100 trillion market to build out Wall Street, the actual physical location to think about the financialization of the whole world economy, right? So I think like still just 1% of it is on blockchain and on chain. That the broader problem, whether not even taking tokenizing all the real world asset and putting Wall Street on chain, but like for all the now asset that you have, like how do you actually manage your portfolio? How do you even really talk about the risk if you just say, oh no, I have a bunch of treasury token, no, I long this, I short that, but I won't be able to like understand the risk that we're taking in different markets.
Yeah. So I think, I think you said quite a lot, and I think there are a lot of meaty content, but might be helpful to kind of break it down even further at the most elemental level. Because first, I think the first point you're trying to make is basically in DeFi, it's no longer restricted by just, hey, a bartering system. Hey, one token for 5 tokens this. Because I think that's basically spot trading, right? And I think, TradFi has done really well, right, in that context, right? And there, even in the world of DeFi, there are more and more of those type of instruments out there, right? I mean, but obviously, the financial world and the economy in the world in general do not just do a simple bartering system, right? That's basically prior to the 17th centuries. That's probably all we do, right? After that, you have way more sophisticated way of actually
credit
system, right?
That system,
right? And the reason why I think venture actually even the founding of the very much the United States of America, the enterprise, right? The idea is basically, okay, am I going to really spend 5 chests of gold to fund you for the next 20 years for you to sail across the Atlantic Ocean, right? And in hope that you can found a colony that can generate sufficient revenue to pay it back. We're talking about the British East India Company.
That's what just happened,
right? So the idea of actually putting a forward-looking concept, right, is 2 chests of gold worth like 5 plantations of worth of like food or cottons 20 years from now. That's kind of what we're talking about, right? This is not a novel concept. It's been in motion for several centuries now, right? But the idea is basically further down the basic option. Basically, okay, well, you can't just base it on like some kind of the expected value. There might be expected value discounted to present, right? Or you may actually have what are some of the other additional volatility signals that you want to capture.
The volatility, right? As you said, what are the factors? So we've been actually unpacking this and really, as you asked me, help me to articulate so that people understand the basic fundamental value. But let me actually go even one level deeper, like to reconstruct the entire financial ecosystem and top of option and derivatives. It take us a few months, if not years. And I would say our industry is doing that, right? Between like meme coins on the other spectrum, some like PhD and professor, it turns out, are really spending years, if not their entire career. As we know, Renaissance Technology and many of the hedge funds really spend the entire 50 years on it. right? And we can really learn that how to build on chain. But you asked me, right, what are the really fundamental things that just like the founding of the country now is a starting point for us? I would say actually I want to go one level deeper, at least for today, to talk about one thing. Many people still ask me, if not, I would say you yourself, is it a zero-sum game? Should we play this? Am I committed to this? Is it even worth playing? Did you pick a wrong career, or you already made your career choice never to touch this, right? Actually, the whole word zero sum come back a lot to this. They felt like this is gambling, this is just a trade. Like someone will lose if I pick an option and leverage 1,000x, someone will lose 1,000x. Worst of all, the feeling that this is just a number game. This is just that a win lose is not going to be anything meaningful of this, and they may be right. It's not a career choice of anyone. Some people actually like to hold a token, like to hold a stock that they see it go up because they are public stock anyway. There are a lot of like due diligence and high bar to go to. And as we know, our favorite stock just went to be number one most valuable this weekend. And I heard a rumor, and someone verified that to me, that there are a great party in Silicon Valley to celebrate that this weekend. And I'm not invited. That's why I'm making the point here. My point here is you're right. Some people should just hold stock, right? Robinhood should not even exist for people to do too much trading there. But it turned out that's the point I want to argue today. And maybe that's why I will leave it to be a great snapshot this week, that at least we finally take one level deeper down. Some people actually don't even care whether there's a new feature, new utility. They actually ask, is it just a zero sum? They actually even ask questions about it.
Kind of like unpack that a little bit, right? In terms of this notion of like zero sum, I'll kind of use kind of a common nomenclature explanation, right? For example, the biggest, most speculative, there has been an entire city built on top of speculation, meaning Las Vegas, right? So the general narrative, you look at the history of Las Vegas, historically, it was actually very negative in U.S. sentiment, right? It literally is called a sin city, right? But if you look at like the past, especially the past 40 years, Las Vegas has generated more revenue, more economic opportunities beyond just gambling, right? Now people actually take their whole family. They're not just for a casino, but family vacation spot, right? Some of the largest conferences, whether it being Snowflake, whether it being sporting events, right? They have their own sporting
many major
leagues, right? It's one of the most popular. Some of the best restaurants are there, right? Some of the best live entertainment shows are there, right? The Las Vegas Sphere, the Dome, right? What I'm trying to make is that, again, going back to like Vegas was conceived as a speculative city, right? And a lot of negative connotation because, again, America's soul culture very deeply founded in Judeo-Christian kind of a context, right? Gambling is somewhat frowned upon, right? But the reality is like, given long kind of a tenure, multi-decades of build out, the individual founder, I mean, you could be questioned by is the founding of Vegas kind of a speculative gamble, like a rug pull, or did the people who founded that city, did they have the intent building a whole city that's actually sustainable? I think the validation of the success of Las Vegas itself is a testament that, well, now it is a much bigger economy, right? It's built on something that's speculative, right? And given sufficient time, they find a way to branch, and some of these branches actually become much bigger than the origin. So that's kind of really a common way of thinking about. Don't just think about options and derivatives and synthetic instruments as a purely speculative. Now, obviously, that's also a kind of a shining kind of a warning bar. So, hey, when you're building these kind of really sophisticated DeFi instruments, it's not for everyone, which is kind of another point I'm trying to make, right? And you touched on briefly, which is this idea of like who should participate, just like spot trading, swap, or hold, right? Versus like someone who's actually saying, hey, I want to go long, right? I want to arb out like 1,000x leverage, right? In general, in a modern kind of a portfolio management, diversify, right? But it's also based on time horizon. In your 20s, your stock portfolio should be like 90% stocks, 10% bond. And every decade, you basically chunk 10% more, 10% more, right? By the time you're retired, you should probably be like, maybe at best like 20% stock, 80%, bonds, right? Or T-bills.
I want to revisit that number. I think it was one of our favorite, is maybe our favorite investment fund, ARK, that talk about how much Bitcoin people should be recommended to hold. I forgot the stats, but I'm pretty sure it's 20% now.
And Tim Cook, by the way, Tim Cook actually
they say 20%.
No, so Tim Cook, well, he didn't say, he did not disclose the amount of Bitcoin he's holding, but this was like 2 years ago. He himself by the way, people can check on this on CNBC. Tim Cook Bitcoin. He actually said, while Apple may never actually get it, well, he didn't say never, but Apple has no plan to participate in crypto.
Yeah.
He himself said, hey, my portfolio manager have allocated my portion
to be how much
to have he didn't say percentage,
just some. That's
just some, right? But
that's lame, right? Pretty much everyone in Silicon Valley, right. If not, like there are hundreds of million people that have it.
But that to me is more of a barometer.
The fact that Tim Cook has and broadcast and BBC, that I don't take it as a strong signal. But the ARK investment, which really sell it to like institutional, if not many of the like university endowment, specifically said, I think it's 20%. If I remember, like I would have said 5% even privately, but someone managing 10 billion would say 20% for everyone. That's a big jump, right? Yeah. But I'm glad that like many of the thread come back to it, and even Balaji said like lottery is the 40x days main source of revenue, if not a huge increase in revenue.
Well, one half of my college degree was actually funded by the lottery.
Yeah.
You know, thanks, hey Georgia lottery system. You know.
Well, that's the whole point, right? Yeah. But it come back to me a few times the last few weeks of the whole word. Is it a zero sum compared to it? Is it meaningful? So let me use it as a closing remark here. I think to look at it as zero sum when you buy an option, when someone sells an option, when the option close, meaning whether the price at by a certain time, then you win or I lose. To look at the problem. Like intrinsically, that's not the only zero sum thing that I create. And you mentioned about with lotteries, you can do other things. That's true of all blockchain and government system. But to me, I was thinking about this a lot. To not convince other people to like do trade option or you do trading or do blockchain or currency at all, but to answer their fundamental question, right? Why do they care? Why is it meaningful? Is it zero sum that I shouldn't touch it? Not just speculation or gambling. They ask, is it zero sum? Is life meaningless? Is life just a zero sum game that you lose some, you win some, and then at the loss of others, right? I would say it's actually much closer to me because we play basketball and NBA championship just happened last week. That's just this Monday. That zero sum is exactly what the basketball game is, right? Like you play, one of the opponent lost, but the game dynamics and happen of the games of the league is not zero sum, right? For sport is entire like human like effort and endeavor and the game out of it, and then it becoming such a chase to the champion. Chase the champion again, like everyone loses before you can be a champion. To me, it's not just the instrument, just the sport. Like this is the entire market structure. Everyone said it's the essential. If you don't have currency, you cannot coordinate. If you don't have market structure, you cannot really hedge and plan and venture about time. And in this particular case, a financial structure gives you even more instrument and structured product, so that it is true that spot market is only a few $1 trillion, that derivatives and the structural market is 100 trillion for a reason.
Yeah, I think this. I mean, again, you know, it's not a debate whether option or perpetual should exist. I think it's really what capacity, and I think one of kind of a private back and forth was not just between the two of us, but among our close network of friends who've been talking about this, which is like it is a product that it needs to exist for a certain type of user and demographic, like especially pro traders, right? Because it is a really good set of tools. It gives you a different set of tools to do a much more sophisticated price discovery, right? Because again, everyone has a very different level of risk tolerance, right? The reason why you have like stock versus bonds, because some people, you know what, in your 20s, your tolerance for risk is significantly higher than someone who's in their 70s and 80s. Option trading is the same thing, right? So there are people who say, hey, you know what, I have infinite appetite for risk. For some people, it may not be the case, right? So I think it does give you another step to, hey, you know what, discounting on a certain price, right? What is the kind of the value proposition of this meme coin? So for example, giving some real case example, right? If you're talking about like, perp trading on meme coins, right?
Yep, it's happening.
The half-life of a meme coin is actually extremely, extremely short, right? I mean, they literally, especially in the context of crypto, some of the meme coins can literally rise on Monday. By the time, but like afternoon on Monday afternoon is completely, dead, right? So, but some of the meme, like perfect example, Dogecoin, it's still around. It may be around. It might be just like one of the most perpetual kind of thing out there, right? So now you have different ways to say, hey, I Doge in maybe like 4 years ago, but now
for you.
Right. But let's say, hey, you know what? I'm married, I have kids now, and I need to buy my first house, right? Then maybe you can actually perp this out. Say, hey, my tolerance has changed, right? But instead of completely dumping it or completely there might be a whole set of different investors, traders who are willing to have a different risk profile, and they can work with you to basically do a different set of price discovery. So I think the market definitely needs this tool, right?
Okay.
So I think the kind of on the perps, I think there's a lot more to dive in. So I think my goal every week conversation is basically go a little bit deeper and challenge some of the assumption to make. I think I think we just still need to talk about what are some of the kind of the opportunities and risk. I think in the past 2 sessions we talked about panoptics.
Yep.
I think it's all and DYTX.
Yep.
Right. So
and this week I prepared for Opyn and the Perpetual.
Right.
But it been like quite a great iteration on the Perpetual. Right? I'll jump back to it, and like when you really help me digress, also give me like the great point to jump back to. I'll jump back to is derivatives and option in particular great for just pro traders, or is actually I believe it's for everyone. I'll come back to that. Okay. So that we'll jump back and forth enough to make the conversation interesting. I will look through your founding story and timeless story now, and I don't know what point that you want to deep dive, but let me start with some that I really want to ask. Right, like what do you think of the Taiku network launching? I think it will be the story for the rest of the year. They've done very well with even the testnet. They've done very well bringing the ZK community, but Vitalik in particular. What can we expect the next few weeks? Hopefully you can keep mentioning about news and even send me something technical that I can be part of, like the broader industry like advancement as well.
Yeah, so I'll largely break down into 3 bullets, right? So for context, setting it up, right? Taiku is one of the layer 2 networks that we've been working with for the past 4 or 5 months, right? One of their key differentiation on the technical side is that they're it's considered based or like type 1 ZK EVM in a sense that as a developer, for people who are like traders and users, they may not care, but for developers, it's a big deal. That means whatever application you're developing is literally easily translatable from your Ethereum developer. Whatever you write is easily transferable to Taiku, right? So this is actually one of the kind of the main selling point. And Vitalik, he doesn't usually chime in with these type of things. And he said, hey, I believe in this because this makes developers' life a lot easier, right? The second thing I think what makes it most kind of impressive is actually community. They're true. And I think people use the word community often like as an escape hatch. It's not a community, right? But community does really make and break a particular network, right? It doesn't matter how strong your technology is, right? And for context, Taiku has well over 1 million active Discord members. And if you go to the Taiku's Discord community, you're just seeing literally constant stream of messages, right? And this actually even overtakes like Polygon. Again, Polygon's done an amazing job, but Taiku really spent. I think by my last count, they had close to like 7 or 8 like 24/7 Discord moderators on staff to basically engage, and that's a huge deal, right? Most you probably have 1 or 2, but they really go out of their way. And I think the third, which is I think more important, which is actually more of a failure. So it's not just pump and dump Taiku, but like I think the inability to communicate, and I think this is probably one of the things that I'm learning at in real time as well, which is you have a great tech, you have a great community, you got to over communicate. And this is a reminder for ourselves, right? That's why I'm kind of
that's why we're broadcasting.
We're broadcasting, but also remind like you got to repeat the same message over and over again.
Okay.
And just don't assume people care. The reality is like you only occupy literally less than 1% of someone's attention at any given moment. Right. So I think that's one of my observations working with Taiku from mainnet 3 all the way to testnet 3 to all the way to mainnet, which is in terms of the way they allocate the tokens, the way they reward the communities, right? The way they communicate with very different dApps, right? Even like, for example, they were working with Galaxy or, in Track. I think there still exists this kind of like bottleneck communication. There's a lot of kind of like discrepancies, right? And especially in crypto, whenever there's discrepancy of communication,
People just come up and
people come out. It's FUD,
Fear,
right? It's like
yeah.
it's basically like fear, uncertainty, and doubt, right?
Mhm.
It's a rug pull, right?
Mhm.
So I think this is something that I think that as we're kind of going to the next chapter of like harmony and timeless, right? I think
Mhm.
our community is basically, hey, let's just over communicate,
It's true.
right? It may be annoying to us because I'm probably getting on your annoyance. Like, hey, Stephen, let's just remind people why it's
Same
perpetual.
story. Let's
Same
tell
story,
again,
but it's like,
right? Yeah.
but the reality is like you can't assume you have someone's undivided attention because
Or they remember what you
or
said.
they remember what you said,
or
right?
They say it the way that you want them
Yeah,
to be like written that
right.
way.
So that was my 3 main lessons
I
learned,
like
right, with Haiku. Yeah,
And would you say ZK have finally arrived?
ZK is boring now. So again, I think this is again goes back to some of the early journey, right? And I think the ZK back in 2021, 2022 was kind of a science fiction.
Yeah.
Meaning like, okay, if you have a PhD in computer science,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
talk about it, right? Even people who are working on ZK,
Yeah.
if you ask them what it is, they can't explain it to you.
Yeah.
What they do is that they give you a whole bunch of technical mumbo jumbo jargon,
Yeah.
hoping that you'd be just so impressed, right? Oh, ZK circuits, we're gonna do this. Like in reality, they're also trying to figure it out, right? But now, like, fast forward 3 years later, I mean, ZK is boring. Like if you just, for example, let's look at Starknet,
Mhm.
right? ZK Sync,
Yeah.
right? Not the hottest project. And
It
by the way,
just-
I don't
it
mean
just
that
work,
negative.
right?
It just yet another project, right?
But it's incredible.
Right.
As you said, when it arrives, it really feels boring, if not like well, not understand it. What's there to talk about?
It's a commodity now. That's the short answer. Yeah.
Commodity,
Yeah.
like as you said, right? Like social, smart wallet. The smart wallet part is really the big part that we debate a lot about, whether it's useful, meaningful, or even innovative enough. Same thing with ZK, right? Most people still don't think it's possible, don't know what it is, and honestly maybe still very expensive to do proofs, and there's still a lot of technical things to solve. But by the time that the entire like ecosystem can go without change, because it's a type 1 EVM ZK part, then it become boring.
Yeah.
Right, the developer don't need to think about it. Someone would finally isolate and just optimize the hell out of it. And I think it's very meaningful, right? Like when we are in Silicon Valley, when you have the computer science background as well, we just assume that now we learn it, we understand it, there's not much to talk about anymore. It's actually the opposite. To time, I wouldn't say time, but at least to keep on working on something and be able to ride the wave and being part of the market. To the point of ZK, like we were talking about ZK, I still remember 6 years ago.
And that was actually one thing that you and I, we can reminisce a little bit in the sense that I think there was like probably 3 key ideas back from all the way from 2021, 2022, even to 2023. There were 3 key ideas that were really fascinating. Number one is ZK, DAO, right? And then obviously this idea of smart wallet, right? And I think by and large, I think, of the 3 predictions that you made, the big bet that you made at a time, DAO is still kind of a TBD right now, to be honest, right? It's not to be dismissive. Maybe the next bull market will be generated by DAO, right? But ZK by and large is a commodity, and I mean that in a positive way. Meaning it is a necessary ingredient for many of the layer 2s and many of the technologies being out there, right?
Yeah.
And smart wallet, where I talked about. So I think ZK is definitely a real thing. I think the one thing that I think, just before I forget, right, to kind of really address a little bit is also this idea of like the kind of the larger integration across like gas fees and speed in transactions, right? Because I'm actually going to present to one of our investors on a conference meeting next week with SNZ, and I was talking to one of our investors, Keith, a mutual friend of ours, and we're just going back and forth debating, literally in real time. It's like, it's like, why are you doing layer 3, right? It's like gas fee is cheap enough, and I'm trying to bring this bigger points. Like, for example, there was a moment in time you probably think, hey, Harmony, the gas fee is significantly lower than any of the L1s out there, right? And continue to be the case today, right? Then the question is like, why do you need things like Polygon, layer 2s, right? So now with Blob, the introduction of Blob, gas fee has gone down dramatically, right? We're talking about like the average gas fee for layer 2s on within the EVM ecosystem was like 0.1 to 0.2 cents, right? That's insignificant.
Yeah, for some applications.
Right, for some applications, right? So, and some of the investors are like, well, that's low enough. You don't need to go any lower, right? I was like, no, the Jeff Bezos quote is like, you can always go lower, right?
Yeah,
you can be free,
cheaper,
right? Cheaper is better, right?
Decades long,
right? Journey. So now, like some of the, for example, the DGen, the layer 3, has been reading really well on base. 0.00001, right? And I think that's the world we're going into,
Yeah,
right?
it's funny because to talk about layer three is exactly the question I want to ask you. So I want to ask that, and I will have a jump point after you answer to come back to the perpetual, because I think it's actually the same thing as you drive for the social use case, right? So to talk about layer three, the great question is, when will it happen? Like, is it already happening? Right? Is it clear to you this is a journey that is not just about data availability, but the layer three to really think about what other on-chain social actions can be there,
Yeah.
right? And I think Farcaster answered that beautifully, right? That it start very, very centralized. It would even do it on testnet, and by this weird lens come out announcing going with CK Sync, right? Huge like incentives to make sure that it's not about that protocol thesis anymore. You have to build your audience, and now you can choose to become turning your app into a chain.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think the concept of layer three, I think this is part I think for both of us is the most exciting part, right? We both like to say certain things sometimes are galvanizing, meaning like you can't agree with me instantaneously because it is somewhat controversial because it's very novel, right? And because the definition of layer three in itself has changed quite a lot. For example, like back in the days, like 4 or 5 years ago, when you guys were rolling out, going mainnet, the idea of layer two or layer three is basically it's an application specific chain, like app chain, right? For Cosmos, they do that very, very well, right? So I actually talked to Ethan, right? And he's like, hey, like this idea seems like it's a made up term. And then even like we also just applied to Alliance DAO this week, and one of their founders, Chow, actually, 4 months ago, he was just having a good time making fun of layer two. He's like, oh, like, they're making fun of it, right? And rightfully so. He's like, hey, do we need it, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't even you can't even define what it is.
Okay.
Right? And I think that to me is actually the most exciting part as a founders and for people who are listening, right? Just because I cannot give you a definition, there's no Wikipedia entry.
Okay.
That's actually the most exciting part. If there's like a really well refined Wikipedia entry, that means people have already done it. Like, then what's
adventure anymore?
It's not a pioneering thing, right? What's the point of you being Silicon Valley trying to do something new, right? So now, like, if you listen to again, I'm not calling out Chow. Like, last week he did another podcast, and he's talking about like this thing is real, right? Because the definition has changed quite a lot. It's no longer is it really just about gas fee optimization? I think that's one of the ingredient. The second ingredient is basically there are certain performance characteristics that you can fine tune. It's not just about being fast. For example, one of my favorite things we can keep going back and forth about is like basically, can we actually have more native account abstraction? For example, many of the layer twos in the EVM ecosystem does not have native account abstraction, including Harmony. Actually, you guys don't have native account abstraction yet, right? But because like layer three is purposely designed, you can actually incorporate EIP 7020 day one. So you accelerate adoption. So adoption doesn't always have this at the kind of the base layer, we're like layer one, layer two, because that takes a lot of effort to convince everyone. So one of the value propositions, hey, we can actually make it native account abstraction day one by modifying the OP stack. Right? So those are kind of the affordability. We talk about composability. Again, I hate that word because a lot of time, when founders and investors talk about it, it's just a cool word to say, right? But composability this is a really good example of that. Modifying the OP stack, you're still part of the super chain ecosystem. It's still interoperable. But now I can actually, in this layer three, I can actually experiment with some of these novel concepts without impacting the larger user base. Because today, base cannot just say, well, we're going to have this support. Because they have literally millions of users. You can't just willy-nilly change that. Right? So that's another reason why layer three exists, to experiment with some of these crazy ideas. And this is one thing that I'm encouraging you to think about, which is passing back the baton back to you, which is I know SHA-1 has been talked about quite a lot within the concept of Harmony, right? That in itself, from a nomenclature perspective, it doesn't have to be just SHA-1 is yet another parallel shard with the layer SHA-0 on Harmony, right? That's the layer one. That could be completely optimized. The behavior, again, this is not just an adjective anymore. The behavior of SHA-1 on Harmony could actually be fine-tuned for a set of use cases. A lot of them could be perpetual, right? Because you may need a much, much lower gas fee because you can have price discovery, not measuring based on every minute or every hour. That perpetual could be settled because the Oracle's on chain.
Very true. If not even SHA-1 being part of the super chain.
Exactly.
Meaning part of the OP stack. And I think that's really where the innovations are. Like people talk about state channel, people talk about like different OP codes back in even Bitcoin. People understand some of these things can be a makeup concept, or can be the buzzword today.
Mhm.
The fact that layer 2 really works very well now, and work up to the point before ZK even like make it to be the last upgrade, is the proof that it's not about what you label it. It's about what primitives today that should work. And as a matter of fact, why I use that layer 3 for your social application as a jump off point back to the Perpetual and DeFi is exactly the same reason.
Mhm.
Everyone talk about on-chain operations. People would argue that, of course, it should written be a clearly um, formal code of Solidity in a smart contract, except for EVM. But it turns out that many of the DeFi in the derivatives still not on-chain, right? The Oracle is not fast enough to talk about like per second or even sub-second. Like price feed is actually update over like
The liveliness test, right?
yeah, it's very slow. And the new Oracle called Pool Oracle is like you getting the price very expensive and updating it. There are a lot of innovations still not happening on chain.
Yep.
Right. And for as you said, someone to be competing on Ethereum mainnet and even OP and to change both features and the gas fee are actually not possible. Even this year for social and for some of the fast DeFi, right? Wouldn't be for AM anymore, but for option is the proving point.
Yeah.
That actually both the infrastructure as a protocol platform and the application. For the protocol, it means that there's still a lot of innovation to complete the ZK story, which is another 10 years away, to really figure out what are the infrastructure of roll-up kits. So that it's not just about if you're doing state channel again, back in the plasma time, there's already like great secure settlement, place, data availability is well solved. So these are the things that infrastructure and platform should talk about.
Yeah.
And our application really attracted users so that by the time you bootstrap and you can really pick the right tool.
Right. So yeah, and I think this is kind of where like having a separate network, like a layer 3, that have certain performance characteristics that are specific for a set of applications. I think that is a novel concept that has, I mean, again, one of our favorite friends of ours, Nick Weiss, talking about modularity. Well, this is modularity in action. Modularity is not just about data availability or eigenlength for restaking. Modularity literally means there will be n number of new, interesting, specific use cases that are fine-tuned for a particular set of challenges and opportunities, right?
Yep.
And again, for me to explain in layman's term, for example, right? Database, right? Historically, it's always about, hey, you need a basic. Why Oracle database so valuable? It's still a multi-billion-dollar company.
It's true,
right?
The most basic,
right? The
relational
most basic,
is not key value.
because guess what? They have a really good concurrency and guarantee for being passing the asset test, right? But not every single, and it wasn't until probably about maybe 15 years ago we realized you don't need that database for everything you do, right? And that's why, for example, back in my days, I'm dating myself a little bit, right? Back in my days when I started joining Google in 2006, the AdWords database was actually written on top of MySQL, because they don't need a global view. So that's why the AdWords database, by the time I left, it has like 140 shards, right? And that's probably one of the inspiration for Harmony's shard design, right?
Has been that case,
Because if you're just doing like database transaction for literally hundreds of thousands of different AdWords advertisers, one advertiser don't need to talk to another advertiser. So why do you need a global state? Just have multiple shards. So it's way cheaper, way faster, right? And then even that, like a lot of the thing you realize you don't need MySQL, right? You don't need to pass the asset test because it's not a transaction. For example, doing a posting on like indexing the Google search query, you don't need a global state. You don't even need like consistency because it's not deterministic anyway. So that's why you have like things like Bigtable. This is my long way of saying, yes, layer 1 is almost like Oracle database, right? You need a global consistency, global view, right? Global view, right? Right, it's immutable, right? Layer 2, you do need a batch processing, right? So you can have like multiple kind of different roll-up, right? Optimistic kind of a rollout. Layer 3 is, you know what? Not all on-chain actions is a high value dollar commit swap, right?
It should be economic security.
So economic security, right? And not all data needs to be stored permanently. For example, Celestia is famous saying, hey, their DA's 21 days, right? The OP stack, I think it's 14 days, right? So my point being is like, as long as you go into it with a kind of a core engineering mindset, like be as specific as you can, with the use cases, then the solution will present itself,
Yep,
right?
like that.
So going back to the kind of the perpetual thing, right? I think, like, is it safe to say, I don't know, I know you're still kind of in the early days of exploring this idea.
Yep.
Is it safe to say this is something that you plan to roll out and maybe in a very different characteristic?
Mhm.
Because there are multiple perps out there,
Yep.
right? You are finding a different, more
Mhm.
kind of a novel or more kind of innovative kind of a interpretation.
I like the question.
Right.
Well, it's the big topic I prepared today. We've been looking at quite a few derivatives, but perpetual options and perpetual futures in particular. And this week I picked Opyn, OPYN, not because is something that we talked before or even like great traction today. Is because the history we need to study first. As much as I claim myself to be in the industry full time for 7 years now, there's actually a lot of things that happened. That it's not just about a quick weekend reading and you can catch up. And I must say derivatives is some of these, right? Why did FTX fail? Why did some of these DeFi that like decentralized exchange people talk from the very beginning? I must that it must be from the Bitcoin days. That why does AMM have a breakthrough? Why would Panoptic come out and claim that even Uniswap V3 is like an option call? So now this thing is not about the formula that you need to be so deep to even get the intuition. As you asked me, what space that I will land myself first as the first thing that helped, honestly, Harmony to get back to great traction and DeFi ecosystem is extremely difficult to us, right? When we have like hundreds of millions of like grants and opportunity, and when we are like early in the like layer one protocol, anything we do is correct. Right, because the market lives to be there. Like now, we are restarting our DeFi ecosystem. We are really helping, really paving the road. That I'm not just doing a single thing, but there has been a potential that it become the primitives for other products and partners to come. That's a much harder to answer questions. So to answer specifically, what would be the strategy? Is there a product we can look forward to the next few months? The answer is yes. We're doing a deep research analysis on only one thing. What can be the Q3 impact on Harmony ecosystem? That is not about writing a white paper that would be true in 3 years. And it's not just about a quick fix and quick fork and a quick, like a meme coin that will get it done in a few weeks and don't know what to do next. Can there be a primitives that not only I believe in and work on, but it can really be the foundation of the future? We are starting a quarterly time frame, and it turned out that they are really promising one. So to call it derivatives and to a perpetual, it's just these are some labeled in thousand average, is to get your attention to ask me the question, right? And what we have identified the 3 characteristics, and I just wrote it this morning. So there's some that we talked about the last week. I will iterate one more time, and we'll jump back probably in the second half of the second hour, hopefully back to memes and AI to unpack on other topic that we have prepared. But let me at least list out the 3 things so that I'll keep saying it every week until it have happened, until we have launched. 2 things we already talked about already, so I'm going to quickly touch about it. The first one is on-chain. Second thing is open source. I'm not going to go through it today because we said many times already. First criteria is actually on-chain. We're not dealing with over-the-counter service. We're not dealing with that you need a entire cell app chain off-chain order books, matching, off-chain keepers, so that like it is possible that we are not bootstrapping like entire ecosystem. We're just bootstrapping maybe really just a cell, so that really it's just a few thousand lines of code that we need to review and possible to fork, redeploy, ask our partners to look at ecosystem to be compatible to be there. Like by the time it's human, meaning DAO, meaning metaverse, like there are too many unknowns that are not doable in quarter time. So the on-chain part turned out to be our first top criteria. Second part, open source. Not only because I grew up in open source, it's so that we can study it first. And there are really multiple forks of it first, so that we already hatch out that, if it's open source, we can test it out on testnet yet first. As a matter of fact, our developer already deployed to mainnet already. Even though we don't know whether we can put real money in it, the license may not work yet, that we need to negotiate our partner, we'll test it, we'll do diligence first, audit it first, right?
Yeah.
So open source really have that power,
Yeah.
right? But today I want to say one more thing that we didn't talk about the last 2 weeks, and I wrote down in the blog post that I shared for today's TGI. It's called easy dependencies.
Okay.
It turned out that many project and protocol, their business opportunity and secret source are the things that you cannot replicate. You call it modes, you call it like secret source.
Right.
It's actually really difficult for us to actually filter out. It's very easy to check with open source, even though there are a lot of like people call them open source if they only show a few code snippet. But you spend a few days, you understand where it is, right? The hard thing is, do we have all the oracles, multiple oracles? Do we have some money market? Do we even have native stablecoin? Do we have native fiat on-ramp that easily get the fast money withdrawal? And whether the bridge can really have a way to list long tail asset? Do we have our own ecosystem of enough tokens so that like the long tail trading is interesting enough to be even talk about the futures? These are the dependencies actually people don't talk about when they say, oh, why don't you do that as well? Or why don't you do meme coins as well? Or why don't you do something like extremely like technical, which we don't have foundation. So finally, I told the team, I told our research partner to really think about these three. Hopefully in the next few weeks, I'll come back with a candidate of what approach project, and if not, like what are the possible product that we can deep dive.
Yeah, I mean that's actually been one thing that to put it mildly, I'm like I always been kind of probing you. I'm poking a little bit, just hey, let's go a little bit deeper, right? Because to really achieve that product market fit, it's not going to be just a technical differentiation, right? So it's not just going to be because the market's ready, right? You really do need to find like what is that unique kind of can you find an angular momentum to kind of cut through all the noise, right? The kind of the attracting initial set of liquidity, right?
Yeah.
Whether being long tail or fat head, I think that's debatable. Like, I mean, we can go back and forth on that, right? How do you actually really get people to really care and actually participate? I think that remains to be seen, right? That's what I'm saying. Like, I mean, openly kind of critical, like just between the between two of us, like, hey, once you build this, right? Because I know that you can build this tool,
go
right?
to markets,
right? And I think that's
the question.
I think, and you know, to be fair to you, you have always, hey, you haven't thought about it, so let's take this offline and we can reiterate in maybe in the course of the next couple of months.
Yeah.
Right? But I think, you know, in terms of like some of the kind of the catching the lightning in a bottle twice, I think that really is the kind of I think you already kind of identify some of the key ingredients of why this is important, right? And I think the obviously, you know, Harmony as a whole, like certainly needs some additional kind of reinsert itself into the crypto narratives, right? I think that to me is the kind of the invisible variable that, you know, part of the reason, you know, self-serving reason that why I'm doing this, why you're doing this, be say, hey, like we're still around, right? You may not like what we say. You may say, hey, you know, what you're talking about may not be relevant to what I need to do, right? But at least, you know, we're saying, hey, we're still here thinking about this, right? And then maybe over time, you know, like we're not trying to win you over in one live stream or one, you know, X space, right? Like we're saying, hey, we're going to continue to explore this, and maybe not next week, maybe not even next month, but at some point you're like, oh, they've been talking about this openly.
We are actually still too early. For many narratives. So it's already second half the session. Let's at least talk about one thing personal of the entire story. I don't know which one you'll pick, but for sure, tell me what happened in last December that you were doing so many support tickets.
Yeah, so I think this is kind of like one. I mean, again, you know, the overly trite analogy is like everyone has a plan until you get punched in the face. So I mean, you know, we've been doing this wallet thing for a little over a year now, right? I mean, starting with the Harmony days, right? So you know, we had like, you know, like going to the launch was linear. We had like, you know, close to 8,000 test flight, you know, members. We've been testing for almost like 9+ months, right? We started already, and then the kind of reality is this, right? Number one, I think if you're in Silicon Valley, actually just in the greater US market, I think you really do not know the crypto users outside the US, right? Like
True.
For us, like, why does $1 gas fee cause you go angry? Right? And then you kind of realize, oh, some of these people are literally making $5 a week. You ask him then for $1 or sometimes $20, right? That's a huge amount of mental ask. And when the node or when the Etherscan doesn't show the balance, even just for that maybe 1 or 2 minutes, they're freaking out, right? So, and I think that's something that it's not like intellectually I cannot grasp, but it's very different than we have like 500 or 600 people messaging you on Telegram saying, "Hey, you rug pull me," right?
It's a 20 hours
Right.
day for a whole week thing.
And not to go into all the graphical details, but it was literally the week before Christmas. I was on a family break. We worked our ass off, right? So I'm gonna take a little break at launch, and it's gonna go okay, right? Myself and my co-founder team and was like, hey, we're gonna do customer support, right? We divide literally I end up spending every single minute, every single hour for those 6 days answering support tickets, right? So that's a gory detail, but it's not the user's fault. And actually, that's one thing that I think we can all learn from Larry Page. The user's never wrong. Just because you don't type the query perfectly in Google search. I mean, that was actually one of the kind of initial. If you worked at Google, that was one thing Larry always talked about. Oh, there's like typos, there's grammatical errors, right? The engineer was, well, that's user's fault, right? How am I supposed to know that they meant like this particular thing, right? Larry's like, well, do you want this user or not? If you don't, then I guess it's their fault. If you want the user, you want to solve their problem, then it's your problem, right? So user's never wrong. So I think that was one thing that it took me a while emotionally to understand. Like, yeah, they call you a lot of graphical, nasty names, right? Mm-hmm. But at the end of the day, it's their money, right? Yeah. If I want to support them, I need to own up to it, right? And it took almost like a month to kind of go through that PTSD. But I think there's also a reminder, right? Like when you're doing perps, when you're doing layer 3, your target audience, you need to anticipate what are some of the problems that can go wrong.
It's crazy hard.
Right.
So on that note, congrats again to the 120 hours week that you used to charge a lot more for a consulting day.
There you go. But yeah, so cheers. Another week down the can.
That's great. So we can open up another topic, other topics. Yeah. But it seems like you have a lot prepared for AI. You want to jump ahead? I can ride along to say a few things too.
Yeah, I mean, well, let me put it this way.
Okay.
I always like to quote these cheesy movie lines. One of my favorite quotes from Devil Wears Prada is like, America is my home. Oh no, America. I was born in America, right? But Paris is my home, right? I think AI and crypto is this, right? Like, and I'm in crypto for a long haul, right? But truth be told, my first love, your first kiss, it's always gonna be AI. I mean, I don't know if it's true or not for you, but I don't know. You want to say something about AI or?
Well, I don't know whether AI is my first or last kiss, but you are right. Like AI is a very much broader market, as I always say. It's the next 1000x change that is coming actually just this decade. Yeah. And to prove the point, I mean, NVIDIA really took the crown jewel now. So it doesn't matter whether we come up with something like today to do about AI or how to integrate for your product and how our infrastructure can be for AI data. It matters that we are still part of the bigger change in humanity.
And I think that's really, really important, right? Because, and I'm hopefully not overstepping the line speaking this way, right? You and I, we started our journey in AI and we got the battle scars. Mm-hmm. We got, if you look at our social media feed back in 2017, 2018, for almost 3 years, we talked about machine learning and AI week over week, just in this similar format, right? So for people who are listening, like, please do not perceive, Steve and Z are jumping into this AI thing because AI is hot. Mm-hmm. We were here before it was hot. We're here when it got really bad, right? And I'd say that is my first love in the sense that I think there's something intellectually interesting and philosophically interesting about AI, right? Mm-hmm. Like a synthetic being that's actually as capable, if not more capable than a human, right? Okay. I think that to me is always interesting. And then part of it is also that I think with AI, I think there is a kind of I think blockchain and AI need each other, right? In the sense that I think you and I would both have this assessment back in 2018 when you decided to pivot into blockchain, right? Which is that AI fundamentally, and I think we'll be glad to be proven wrong, but generally speaking, AI favors the incumbent, the big players. The people are really well resourced. Yeah. And again, I'm happy to be corrected, right? But that has been the historical trend, right? I think blockchain, for the most part, favors the new players, right? So I think that the two each other to balance each other out, right? And NVIDIA, as I'm a big fan of NVIDIA, it's actually a proven case where they're getting bigger and bigger and bigger, right? And I don't have a problem with people getting bigger, right? But absolute power corrupts absolutely, right? And I so fundamentally believe in that, right? So, but mine is kind of the larger kind of a looming issue. I think for me, it's always interesting to explore like the kind of like what AI is, one, the potential opportunities, right? And then some of the kind of the underlying narrative, right? For example, and the reason I want to bring it up today is because the dust has settled. You know, first it was like Google I/O, that was Microsoft Build, then it was Apple. And this is our third session. We purposely didn't talk about it, right? Because I want to kind of really let some of these, whatever they announce, marinate. And just kind of, so I'm not just reacting, oh my God, like Apple's amazing, OpenAI sucks, or vice versa, right? But my kind of general takeaway is basically, one, I think some of the bigger players, they clearly have taken advantage of whatever moat, whatever distribution channel they built, right? And one of my kind of most interesting things, like, you're never too late if you really build something great. So I think for the past Apple, right? Because everyone like makes fun of it, right? And no, I think they're just in time. They didn't need to make all the mistakes from Apple or from Google, Microsoft, or OpenAI, right? So guess what? It's not about being the first. That was one of Tim Cook's favorite mantra, right? Don't be the first, be the best. Second thing is basically, don't pay for your own. Learn from other people's mistake is significantly cheaper, right? And I think, and part of it is also the adoption. I mean, in terms of what they announced, I thought there was a couple of key takeaways. Number one, they effectively made large language models a commodity.
That's actually really true,
right? And this is actually a Ben Thompson analysis, which is back in 2007, Apple realized they can make AT&T, Verizon, NTT, Docomo, Vodafone a commodity, right? Because at the end of the day, just a phone, right? Or just a telephone line, right? And at the end of the day, for the past 10 plus years, their average profit margin is around 47%. That's not the case for any one of the internet providers or cellular providers. And at the end of the day, you look at like 100 degrees outside or it's stormy outside, usually it's the AT&T, Verizon, or Vodafone, fixing the lines, right? Why is that? Because I think jobs, whether being prescient, they figure out a way to how to jujitsu their way in, right? And I thought that was really interesting, where Apple, by their announcement, say, hey, today we decided to go with the best provider, OpenAI.
And you don't even pay for it.
You don't even pay for it, but they actually said it explicitly. There will be other partners being announced.
Wow.
Right.
So my take is actually quite the opposite.
Okay.
So I didn't even prepare anything AI because I was looking into it. I don't even have anything to say. Funny enough, we did so much research reading together, and that's the founding of the TGI, and that's how we met, to get very technical in research, to know what's next and what's coming for the next few years. And last year, we spent quite a time together, and you helped me really figure out the product. And we have a great milestone of understanding how AI data, social AI, social AGI can be even my mission of understanding what blockchain can do. But it matters. It's good to write a white paper. It's great to give a talk. It's great to call that your mission in our first case even. But it's another to know what can be done this quarter for Apple, for OpenAI, and for ourselves, right? And seeing the Apple announcement, testing many of the AI product, and actually paying like $20 for each of the service, really actually have the opposite effect to what happened to you 6 months ago, and it just happened to
because I know you famously unsubscribed to a lot of those, right?
So like the $20 is easy if you justify anything faster and getting any value out of it. It's what I saw, like actually a few points. You said it right. Apple, Microsoft for sure are really having the advantage. Bigger companies have the distribution, and Apple proved the last point. None of the product that Apple launched get me excited at all. Okay. I've seen it; it's great. Like kids will use it. Anyone never tried AI product before? It's better than the ChatGPT interface or OpenAI. That's right. But it really wasn't the premises, right? It's not giving you a little bit different emoji and actually summarize it because you hold all my data in your phone already. It's actually like for big companies, Microsoft, like Apple, to capture that value is entirely true. But it's not like what Tesla have done with their robots.
Right.
It's not like self-driving car for sure. I don't even know what am I looking for anymore.
Okay. So let me put it this way. I agree with you 100%, but I also disagree with you vehemently. I think this is actually one of the larger narrative, because you have a PhD. I think you're always looking for something that's really hard to grasp, right? The opening line is like AI for the rest of us. It's not for you, right?
Yeah,
You were
yeah,
playing with
yeah,
it,
yeah, Apple
right?
Intelligence.
How many people of the 8 billion people on this planet, right?
Mhm.
There's less than 0.1% of people can, hey, I like AI.
Yeah.
I'm going to motivate my team. I'm talking about your story now, right? To build my own version of her. You literally did that early this year. You're literally the 0.0001%, right? Even a lot of CS majors, people who have technical background or money, they cannot do what you do. So I think your lens is completely warped from that
No
perspective,
doubt.
right?
Yeah.
I think the second thing I think I disagree with you is in the sense that I think you actually agree with this point, which is like some of the biggest change actually when it's actually finally start happening is the least exciting. For example, Tesla. I know where you're going with like self-driving cars, right? Did you know like this is actually one of the shocking story. You know, Waymo just booked $50 million per quarter revenue from Waymo, the self-driving, right? In San Francisco, they book I think close to like 30,000 rides per month. It just works, right?
Anymore, yeah.
Again, people who are outside of Silicon Valley in San Francisco, oh my God, this magical thing is about to happen, right?
Yeah.
If you go to San Francisco, you see this Waymo thing. I don't even pay attention to it. I'm invisible. The Cybertruck gets more attention than a car that has like 3 passengers in there just driving around by itself, right? You don't pay attention to it. So my point being is actually, it's no longer exciting. I agree from a technology perspective. Nothing that Apple showed you and I would cannot imagine 6 months ago, for example. But the way they go about it was very subtle. For example, generative image. I was probably one of the earliest users for Midjourney, right? So everyone's interpretation Midjourney is basically okay, prompt based, right? Large, high resolution, photorealistic style, right? It takes on average about 15 seconds to generate for a 2x2 quadrant, and then generate a high resolution. Sure. You know what Apple did? We don't want to
on device, right?
On device, and actually even that. They say, hey, the number one killer use case is not generating high resolution. Just emoji on device, faster, cheaper, right? Less likely to have a African American George Washington or an Asian American Nazi, right? So that to me is like just I don't think it's intelligent, it's clever. Like they.
So let me say it differently, and you and I would cry over this, right? My I don't disagree with the point. Just like you would give me my PhD credential to criticize whether it's technical enough. My point I'm trying to make is online advertisement industry is dead, has died. We die along with it. And our favorite company and our best career really is a big part of it, right? No doubt that at one point advertisement was predicting what we want to click, what we want to buy, like getting my attention, but it's not the right mission, right? I really don't think AI is for making emojis.
Oh, that I agree.
Yeah. Doesn't matter how fast, how easy, how will be the first thing they get exposed to. I mean, Apple do all that, and it's great money for all that. It's a great product for all that. But I really, really think energy is really about solving all the productivity and getting out of the Earth and getting to Mars. And AI, whether for robots, for automation and solving our life, whether we need to work or whether not just about the efficiency, but that now we have choices not to work and not to be busy about.
Yeah, I think so. I agree with in this sense, right? Like I think keep in mind, I think you have always been really good pulling me back, like because my timeline measurement usually like is somewhat indefinite, hence the name timeless. So you're always like, hey, are you talking about like 10 years from now? Like it's hard to disagree with something that you predict 10 years, right? But that's always my default, right? Because I kind of zone out and just, like I'm gonna philosophize this a little bit, right? So I agree. Like that is not the number one reason why the Transformer guys, Ilya is one of our, we mutual friend of ours, right? Like that's not the original reason for writing Transformer paper, right? They certainly did with 10 years later, literally billions upon $1 billion investment generating a cheap little emoji, right? But I kind of look at it in a different lens in the sense that ironic, paradoxical, AI actually may be doing more, Apple may be doing more to decentralize and democratize generative AI on device, completely air gapped.
No doubt.
Completely decoupled from the server, right?
How to break enterprise into, how to break AI into enterprise and healthcare and government.
Right.
Microsoft and OpenAI did it. So those I don't disagree, right? But if you remember, like the entire world spent 20 years on advertisement. And it was necessary. In some way, when people talk DeFi, gambling, and lotteries, in many ways, advertisement was that, right? It was a necessary evil and a great bootstrap an entire great healthy ecosystem up to a certain point.
Okay, so not to rat hole this conversation, but I did just have a conversation. Hopefully one day, just in case Antonio see this, Antonio Martino Garcias. He's the founder of Spindle, right? We're one of our design partner for Timeless. He's the guy who wrote Chaos Monkey, just FYI. So he was asking like, hey, where do I see the advertising go? Because this is his business, right? And I was like, well, I would not be surprised because money is the most powerful aphrodisiac or kind of a adrenaline pump in the sense that I think there are a lot smarter people than us, literally thousands of them at Google, right? Or thinking about how do they milk the money from generative AI. For example, the Google I/O demo they did was basically this idea of a day trip planner. Right? So historically, you type it correct. I'm making a trip to San Diego, right? And you probably have like 15 different queries. You know, you click probably like 20 different links, make these purchases, right? And I think most people I know, like, okay, I click on some of these links, it's generating revenue for Google, right? I think the demo they did, and I'm assuming that Facebook and Google and Microsoft and Apple will do something similar, which is like a really good piece of ad will actually be indistinguishable from native content. For example, if I do a search on, let's say, you know, how to host a really good podcast, right? Right now, I know Amazon link at the top, sponsored.
Just by
the generative experience might be just like, hey, this is how you set it up. This is blah blah blah. And then when they're giving you the how to set it up, one thing, oh, the row mic, and you may not even intentionally understand. You're actually clicking on a link, right? So I don't have any personal animus towards ad because I come from a different background, right? If it wasn't for the internet, majority of people would not be able to afford high-speed internet access, right? So I'm usually mindful of that, right? So
I don't say ads is bad. I don't even say DeFi is bad, right? So
actually, that's really true. DeFi, because a lot of people criticize DeFi.
But your career was a huge step forward with Android, right? And they literally spend tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions, really bootstrapping the App Store for whether Africa or third world country. And I literally know that people are just taking up those incentives to build like really bad, shitty, no one uses apps too, right? In some way, I mean, we don't feel great about all this money like to waste, but not just necessarily evil. Emoji is not a bad thing. I'm not criticizing it's a bad thing. I'm just saying that that's not I can talk much about.
I mean, it's not. I mean, I'm trying to like hook you into like thinking ladder up to like something more technically deeper. In the sense that I'm always kind of mindful of these things are so intricately connected. Sometimes, like for example, Elon Musk specifically talked about the reason why he was able to successfully build the first Tesla was the advent of laptops. I don't know if you know this. The first set of Model S was actually using Dell laptop batteries. Batteries, right?
Not the laptop.
Panasonic, because it was because of that, right?
Panasonic, I remember.
Right.
The battery are great.
Right. So you cannot make that kind of a. That's why innovation cannot be scheduled, right? And it's non-linear, right? I'm sure the Dell PC guys were not thinking about, oh, in 15 years' time, there's going to be this once in a generational founder who's going to have a large capacity battery, lithium-ion battery, right? This emoji thing, I don't know where it's going to go. And I think
emoji is the meme coins for blockchain, right?
There you go.
For selling $1,000 from like people only looking for the emoji to play with.
And then actually one of the things that Craig Federighi, the senior vice president of Apple, actually one thing he actually talked about, and this is I don't know if people caught it in his interview. He said like the Apple server, the way they process the prompts is completely air gap sheltered, but it also has a log, right? It's just like Merkle tree hash. You know what he said? Very much where basically this is the same technology as blockchain. Every single block is immutable. So every single server when process a prompt, how you make sure that there's no injection, right? Is because
it's verifiable, he said.
It's hashed, right? And he actually used the word specifically, hey, we're doing blockchain, right? That's what I mean. Like some of these things, like would he have used that reference 15 years ago? Absolutely not. I don't think he has any interest in crypto and blockchain, right? But blockchain in a kind of a subconscious way has entered even the most venerable brands, right, in technology.
The use case is real. He used the word verifiable. He said the word like on device and in the private cloud verification is similar to the blockchain technology.
Another letter, 3-letter acronyms, fully homomorphic.
Yeah, you did.
Fully homomorphic encryption, which is, as of 2024, is so when you were talking about ZK, it's so kind of analogous in the sense that it's so impractical to fully homomorphic encryption. Computation is very expensive, very slow.
Yeah.
Right. But I'm hopeful. Someone who's way smarter than both of us, they're probably working on their next iteration, right? And then maybe in 3 years' time, we'll be like, oh, every device has FHE, right? And it's no longer exciting.
Yeah.
But right now, it's actually really difficult to pull off.
It's
right?
difficult. And what actually out of the entire Apple AI announcement, probably that was most surprising, definitely technical, and still a long way to go. Right. The privacy part, but the fact that they're actually doing like in the cloud, but like private, verifiable privacy, which actually don't have time to study like whether it's possible. It's really hard. Like just back in the time when Amazon Cloud came out, no one will trust Amazon the cloud to run any financial application, government application, or any corporate sensitive data. Now it's not even a question anymore.
Right.
No one run their own like data room in their closet or like their on premises, right? Yeah. Same thing, privacy. I wouldn't trust Apple with any AI that touch my like insanely private data, right? But in some way, I already do. Like many of the like Google, Gmail, if not many of the services already touched your data.
Yeah.
Whether it's financial data or like things that you don't even want an AI to know about, I think Apple will get the privacy right.
And I think a lot of the Opyn AI, and I think the reason I'm somewhat again interested in AI is in the sense that I think a lot of our privacy and security is by ignorance. We don't think about it when we talk about it, so you assume it's secure and it's private, but in reality, it's not, right? But by you talking about it, AI basically exposes a lot of the false assumption we have about, for example, a lot of time, we say, hey, literally there's billions of users out there. There's no way someone can actually look at my data. But with advent of AI, that's a possibility now, right?
Well, in many ways, when iCloud first came out, there are a lot of problems, right? Not because iCloud is insecure. There's some problem with it, but the fact that you just leak your password, someone took your computer and just opened it and start looking at your iCloud, and there are a lot of leaks of like photos and whatnot.
Yeah.
And in many ways, our industry dealing with hacks and all these liquidation and oracles manipulation is also just as true, right? Like back in the time was manipulating data of advertisement like clicks. So again, I actually still agree that this is necessary evil that we need to work through.
It's a growing pain, right? And I know it's a sore topic, like being hacked, right? But in so many ways, I'm not making light of it. Some people were hurt by it, obviously, but it is part of the growing pain. Like any industry, any technology sector, you got to go through that process to be battle hardened, right? The reason why Linux is such a secure operating system is because it's open source. It's been battle tested for multiple decades. Even Microsoft, as much as I hate Microsoft, relatively speaking, has got more and more secure because all the possible hacks you could have done in 95, 90.
I can tell you it's still extremely insecure.
Right.
Let me just tell you that.
Right. Too. So I think those are kind of things that you just need to be battle tested in the sense that, the best way to cure, like, it's like free speech, right? The best way to cure is have a free speech, basically. Speech is the best way to cure, right?
Yeah.
So
on AI, I have another complete opposite point I want to make as well. Originally, I prepared something that I thought it would be interesting to talk about, and after quick thinking, I didn't see anything, even for me to open a topic at least to think through for a few days, is how AI is used for mathematics.
Okay.
So since you're interested in science and math in general, but education in particular, that's also a little bit disappointing for me. Okay. So this week and the status of AI product, especially with like community and like blockchain data, was really hard like for business, right? That's why we didn't talk much more as a milestone. But AI for mathematics is also quite a disappointment because that's 20 years ago when I started doing automated theorem proving to now today that Terence Tao talk about every day now about AI for math is still not.
Just because I first learned about Terence Tao during the pandemic. I was bored out of my mind. So there were a lot of like really good Terence Tao Do you want to just give it an audience like maybe
Sure.
who Terence Tao
So
is?
Terence Tao can do multiplication at 2-year-old, literally.
Oh.
And I think a 9-year-old study under some really good mathematician called Paul Erdős to solve very difficult problem. Now he is actually number one mathematician by many measure, have the Fields Medal. But all these are just saying that they are the not only top but the number one mathematician that would even use the word called AI for math or math for AI and using math, right? So all are good. But surprisingly, there's not AI in it after I really gone through a few stuff.
Right. I think in this subject, there's a couple of things, right? Number one, I think you cannot talk about math, AI, and software. It's probably your least favorite, but I think you like his business acumen, Wolfram Alpha.
What about?
Wolfram? Because Wolfram actually, obviously famous in this category, right? He actually he's actually creating a whole new set of theories that actually could only be really addressed or computationally addressed math problems through AI, right? Okay. So he's been talking about it. I don't know the results, right? Okay. Some of them are really, I think you have to have a couple of math PhDs to really understand some of the deeper thinkings that he's going through. But I think this particular set of applications, right? I have heard people who are in the space are beginning to use generative AI to basically really heavy compute to really solve some of the kind of more interesting math problems. Sure. Right. Actually, Fei Li talked about it. Right. She's like, it's not a lack of like foresight to use some of these new models. Okay. It's just that they don't have the compute. It's like all the H100s are like, if you're like a math PhD at Stanford, you're not gonna have like 1,000 H100, right? That 1,000 H100s are being used to render, like you said, emojis. Yeah. They're not being used for solving some of the more interesting math problems, right? So I think I would not be surprised in the next 3 to 5 years where you're gonna have some really major fundamental breakthroughs in math. And I think it's somewhat analogous to biology because money is, when you solve a biological or genetic problems, pharmaceuticals are willing to pay hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars.
It's commercial ready.
Commercial ready, right? AlphaFold being a really good example, right? Now, like literally, they're like multi-billion-dollar companies coming out of nowhere. Shiboni, if he ever listened to this, you should leave.
Street 2,
right? Yeah.
Street Capital is doing very well,
right? And then and it's also not the most culturally relevant. For example, there was an ancient set of scrolls, papyrus, that were buried in the city of Pompeii when it was covered by a volcano, right? So literally they deciphered, right, using AI. But that's culturally interesting, right? People can talk about it, right? If you ever listen to a lecture by Terence Tao, I would think like 1% of people understand what he's talking about because it's so abstract, right? But I think there will be that bridge one day, right?
Well, interesting enough, you probably seen Masterclass, the company before. Terence Tao actually have episode there to talk about mathematical thinking. People actually delineate PhD and non-PhD, mathematics and non-mathematics too much. When I am excited about mathematics, not because I have done and I like mathematics, it's because finally, like AI can do reasoning, can do planning, and actually can verify things.
Oh, now you're walking into this. Now you're walking into like you're going to deflate your own argument. I think for example, one of the biggest announcement, right, was the iPad supporting mathematics, right?
Sure.
So, in my opinion, again, this is kind of a tracing back, and if Lee's listening to this, this is right up your alley, right? Historically speaking, there actually is a huge divide between access, education, right, for math, right? For example, a lot of the kids, especially in the U.S., right, you actually don't learn the full multiplication table until you're in 5th grade. Because I was homeschooled. By the time I entered the elementary school, my last year, 5th grade, I actually did enter the U.S. education. Literally, they were so reciting, right? And the U.S. multiplication table ends at, I think, 11, right? In Asia, actually, it's common to end at 99 multiplied by 99, right? And then once you go triple digit, there are actually these mathematical construct you can. So the point being is like access and the degree of fluency is completely separate, right? Across different socioeconomic status, right? Second thing, which is this, right? Even in high school, I so distinctly remember this, right? Lee, I'm going to say it slowly just so it doesn't confuse you. Or in senior year, you were taking calculus. BC calculus.
Sure.
There are a lot of derivatives
Mhm.
that you can do,
Okay.
right? That if you have do it by hand is actually really slow. But some of the more advanced Texas Instrument calculators, TI-89
Mhm.
and TI-92, these are, keep in mind though, for people who are listening, those calculators back in like the late 90s were
Yeah,
like
$200. Yeah.
200 or more. That's pretty expensive,
Yeah.
right? Adjusted for inflation, right? The rich kids, they have 89 and 92. That's a thing called pretty print. What is pretty print? The mathematical notation,
Yeah.
the derivatives, right? It's actually laid out exactly how you would see it if you were to write it by hand. The less fortunate, you use the calculator provided by the teacher, TI-81 or 82, doesn't do pretty print. That means you slower, right? So literally
answering,
people
yeah.
with 89, they can solve a same test, right? They can solve much faster. Fast forwarding to today, with an iPad, you can actually do so directly by hand. And then on top of that, when did you learn how to do latex? I'm kind of probing a little bit,
That's definitely probably the end of undergrad, grad school.
right? That, by the way, for people who don't, latex is not just something you pick it up like one day, right? You have to use Mathematica, like MATLABs, right? Most people don't have access to that, right? And it is a acquired skill. But now you can handwrite much of the math symbol, right? And iPad will actually recognize that, right?
No, these are great products. So it's not that.
So I'm super excited. I'm pumping in that sense.
Yeah, that you will use iPad to do some formula.
Yeah.
No, I'm excited about the future of technology and what Apple have done for product. When I talk about mathematics and AI, people, I would say even Terence Tao talk in a way that it's actually not AI, right? And when I say AI, literally, there need to be a G in it, whether it's generative model, whether it's about general intelligence. So there's nothing wrong, and Terence Tao is doing great, and he's like, he's not even the.
I'm sure. I hope he's doing great.
He's not even the better mathematician than I am. He's the best mathematician than any other living, right? What I meant to say is people still may not understand the power of AI, and the leading edge of AI is reasoning planning and verifiable meaning proofs. That that there are advances this week, and I even tweet about it, but it's not like AI for math yet.
Yeah, I mean that much I 100% agree, right? Like, so what you just largely described is like actually one of my favorite topics too, right? Which is like agentic workflow. I was actually talking to my wife about it about an hour ago, which is this idea of like multi-step planning. Because I mean, one of the debate we had a lot. Well, it wasn't a debate. It was like, hey, I think multimodal is going to be probably the most immediate thing, right?
Talk about everything.
So the assumption basically it's not just going to be limited to text, and that's by and large is no longer even an interesting topic to talk about. Now it's like multi-step prompt, because prompt engineering is basically trying to do a single shot, right? And that's kind of a dumb way to think about it, right? In the sense that we never interact in the real world with a single prompt. You don't write a single program from beginning to bottom, right, in a single setting. You never write a novel in a single setting, right? So the expectation should not be for AI to do that. Another part is basically multi-step planning, which is a lot of the things can be orchestrated by sequential order. For example, when you make a trip planning, usually you don't book the hotel and you have flight, right? And usually you don't make the dinner reservation until you have flight, hotel, and dinner, right? So that's a sequential, linear sequence. But there's certain planning that you can be done in parallel. You can actually say, hey, you know what? I'm going to book the vacation Disney ticket. You can actually do that simultaneously while you're booking, right? So right now, AI today doesn't do that very well because we have the inability to actually.
The planning part,
right?
Many years
right?
to come.
Now, with the exception, again, this is Google, so you got to take every Google demo with a grain of salt. But during I/O, they did demo. You can type a simple prompt, make a multi-day planning. I'm flying out to Boston. Right. And you will actually figure out all the different things for you on the fly.
I'm betting against it, but we'll come back to that.
We'll come back to that. I mean, I'm saying like Google has a limited amount.
So we only have a few more minutes. So I really want to jump back to the topic, right? You specifically said AI for trading, right? Agents for trading. So let's touch on that, and we'll wrap up with about meme coins, about meme Launchpad.
Yeah. So again, giving some context, right?
Sure.
For people who are listening, if you just for Vitalik AI, he actually did a pretty comprehensive study,
which I don't like,
right? Which you don't like, but by and large, he broke it down into 4 different kind of key hero use cases, right? One is basically just AI help you kind of make it easier to understand whatever's action is happening, right? That was actually AI agents that can actually go for trading, right? Which we'll talk a little bit more about, right? I think if you look at a lot of like professional day traders, a lot of stuff they do is actually fairly tedious and monotonous. They literally have like two major computer screen open, looking at a price difference between one DEX versus another, right? If they're more sophisticated, someone like Isaac, I'm not outing him, he has a script that basically does a immediate delta, right? It's a simple Python script, literally. Piping data from one and look at it. Okay, if he hits a certain button, that he clicks a button on the other side, right? And if you get a little more sophisticated, you can sequence certain trading bots, right, to do that. Again, not many people have a computer science degree. Not many people know how to get repo and fork those, or do an npm and basically build their own. So AI agent, you can actually do a lot of that, right? You can basically set certain prompt parameters, right? And you can actually preset some deterministic kind of actions based on that, right? And the only human intervention is basically you need to off this particular bot access to your wallet, right? So wrapping the wallet around
with
right?
abstraction and policies. So I agree with all that. But where is the G spot for any of this intelligence? That's my only criteria for anyone talking AI to me, right? As I said, Terence Tao talked about AI for math. You can give it any label. It's not using any generative model or general intelligence. It's actually just doing theorem proving, using lean theorem prover that I looked at many years. Same thing, right? Any of this trading, DeFi, wallet, like all the interaction, the prompt, all these like integration and what's not. But there's no G in it. It's not generative. It's not
General intelligence.
general intelligence. Where's the G spot?
Okay, the G spot is somewhere. All jokes aside, I think this is actually the most scary part, right? Because I think it will get there. I mean, I'm very optimistic about technology, right? The scary part is actually a generative AI or general intelligent AI completely unleashed to the financial market. Because I'm the one that believe in that it's a scary day, and we should try to definitely safeguard that. Side note, Iliad, the co-founder of OpenAI, just announced that yesterday he's creating a new company called Safe General Intelligence, right? This is our Safe Super Intelligence new company, right? Part of the reason is because I think there are a lot of trading patterns. We at a human level, we have already started losing the capacity to understand.
Exactly.
Right.
So people are so worried about losing jobs to robots, if not like ChatGPT. They actually don't even know that they're losing money to technology and now like really smart trading platform technology, maybe even generative models. So when people don't even articulate the problem that way, what you describe is true, all the tooling. But if you think about it, it's just a glorified shell script, piping, right? Integration, multi-step, multi-planning, multi-agent just mean you have better integration. That's not AI. I can tell you for a fact it's not, because you can do it today. Right? You just give it a label, which is fine. Terence House give me an AI label, I'll read that, right? But really today, that's what I talk a lot about, right? What is the fundamental building block of DeFi? They need to be like derivatives market options, so they can talk about time, risk, like pricing very differently. When you talk about agents and planning and integrations, I want you to give me more material, and I'll be very happy to be a soundboard the next few weeks to talk about what will be the agent other than making the Q emoji and answering the customer support with like a natural language prompt, which you understand. So the language part, the LLM part, the L part of AI, I think everyone understands in the world now. So I'm going to talk about right, like how to customer support and the interface and the voice interface. I think we understand. What I want to learn more is what would be the agent doing more than just like API calls and like the planning. People don't figure it out now, and calling it AI or not is because people actually couldn't understand why can computer do logic, can do like symbolic computation, which is what you just said, calculus of like pretty print. That actually it was my research topic that I love to be actually debating about.
So I think this is definitely a very interesting topic that, like, if for nothing else, it's just a kind of a personal hobby, right? To kind of really kind of just think about. There's no financial implication, right? I'm not building a general AI, right? But I kind of look at it this way, right? You're absolutely right in this sense, right? We have not achieved the equivalency of, let's say, what AlphaGo did. I don't know if you remember. I actually remember watching AlphaGo
in Korea doing the
right
match. Yeah.
And the reason why it was, I don't think we have achieved that is because I distinctly remember there was one move. I think Move 43 or something like that. There was a name. It was literally named Move 43 or something like that, right? Where he made a move that some of the best experts in Go just disagrees. Like they cannot fathom. It's like it's a wrong move, right? I don't think we had that moment where AI actually discovers some, let's say, financial trading patterns, right, that no one can understand, right?
Well, unlike a Go game or NBA game, no one will talk about it. Much like Wall Street take like the Main Street money for like a century now.
Right.
No one will talk about. No one will know.
And then the crazy part is this, right? Which is AlphaGo is isolation, bunch of servers, right? Mm-hmm. There's no, it's quarantined off from the reality, right? The moment you can, I'm sure someone's already doing that. I'm sure the quant traders are already doing some.
I would say so.
Their own experiments, right? The crazy part is this, right? And I will leave it at this, right? It is reason in probably 2 or 3 years, someone can actually literally create a financial windfall, effectively create what George Soros did, right? Betting against the British pound based on some insights he fathomed himself. But nowadays, why wait for the information to come to you? When you can at scale generate some of the information.
I would say it's already happened.
Right.
It's already is happening. Well, to like parse all the news and natural language for sure.
So yeah,
but you said even something darker, which happened to our election, happened to our like internet attention. I think it's already happened. Much like how social and how online content and how advertisement affected like our modern lives and our next generation. I think it's already happened.
Yeah. So I think why do you need a Kathy Wood to go on Andrew Sorkin Ross CNBC show to talk about, Tesla is going to be hit 100,000 or Bitcoin 1 million, when theoretically you don't need to do that because the distribution vector for something like CNBC or even like Twitter is finite. But when you can actually deploy some of these information at scale, why influence an election when you can influence
the money?
Right, the money, right? So my point being is actually, I think it's going to happen, not because I think that the predictive power like technology, it's just that the incentives are there. And we'll end on this, right? Crypto moves based on incentives.
Yeah. Right? Well, that's why whether incentives, the opposite is sentiment and the memes, right? I don't know whether you can draw the connection today, whether that will be the notes we end on. In some way, what we worry about, whether math can have the reasoning with AI and the trading, whether we actually can be like super intelligence and getting all the money, would they share with us or do we need it? We democratize. The opposite is what we debated last year, right? Whether there will be the social element in it, whether the memes is the value of it, right? I don't know how you want to end on the notes of memes.
I think memes actually, like, again, I think it's one of the words that has been hijacked by recency bias. Like memes.
Where did you hear it first, and what did it mean to you originally?
This is like kind of nerding out a little bit. Like memes actually, like I remember in college we were studying philosophy, right?
Okay.
Like the idea, like
what was the context?
It was societies. Like it was actually Noam Chomsky. Like a lot of the famous philosophers actually has made a name. So hey, we're as a species, as a society, we're mnemonic, right? Meaning we each of this. So and that was
Noam Chomsky. Do you remember?
He actually did an MIT lecture on this. I'll forward you a link, right?
Let's use it for
right. And then that was actually by the way, side note, that was one of the main reasons Peter Thiel wrote in the investment perspectives for the first $100,000 check to Facebook. It wasn't because Mark Zuckerberg showed off like, oh, we're going from university to university. He basically said, hey, people are sheeps. We like to copy, right? We're driven by mnemonic kind of a notion to basically copy what's popular.
Really? Facebook taught memes
so
that time?
Peter Thiel, well, Mark Zuckerberg didn't realize that. Peter said, I'm writing $100,000 check for his internal investment memo because you need to justify with your LPs. He said, that's the reason why I invest in Facebook. It's like, this thing has an ability to basically propagate, a human tendency to copy each other, right? And this is a fact, right? You can actually Google that investment side. So that was kind of heard about in college, and then I think about 10, 15 years ago, you studied Facebook. That was the main reasons, right?
Okay.
So, but obviously memes is very different, right? If you talk to Gen Zs and Gen Alphas, memes basically like maybe a funny gift,
fun
right?
Talk, yeah.
Right? But memes is actually much deeper. The word itself is actually more profound than that, right?
So I would love to know more about Noam Chomsky. Obviously, someone I respect a lot from language, understanding what is context-free language for compilers. So I study a lot of that, but without understanding the sociological aspect of memes that Noam Chomsky talked about. And
this also, by the way, ties into social capital,
Mhm.
right? The reason why I'm fascinated with this concept is not because that's what we're doing, because
Mhm.
like I think last conversation was saying there's only 6 variants of the capitals out there, right?
Mhm.
Human capital being one of them, right?
Okay.
And I made a joke about like, well, I'm sure Karl Marx has something to say about human capital, right?
Okay.
But social capital is basically, hey, we're the famous quote from Eugene Wei is basically, hey, we're status-seeking monkeys,
Okay. Okay.
right? We all like seek some form of status,
Okay.
right? And this is actually true.
So I agree with all that. I would like
Right.
to study all
Right.
that, right? So, but my question hopefully is a little bit different, if not deeper, if not a little bit different. I actually first heard of the word memes, which I don't understand,
Mhm.
but very deep ingrained in my brain from the selfish gene.
Oh, yeah.
So I thought that that was actually
Yeah.
the origin of
Right.
it, but I will go verify. But I think you and I both agree that we were understanding it as a mechanism.
Mhm.
It's not the purpose or the value of itself to be
Right.
mimetic or the memes.
Right.
Right. It's just a mechanism.
Mhm.
Right. But by now, when we talk about coins and financial value and what Gen Z are doing, maybe Gen Alpha will be spending most of the time on. They don't need to do any work and do universal basic income. What would the word memes mean to, let's say, Gen Alpha?
Mhm.
And is meme become not just a mechanism to propagate a social network and to as a marketing for a financial project, it become the value itself, the project itself, and the brand and the community itself is
Right.
my question.
Yeah, I think that's a really, really deep question, right? And I mean, again, there's like some of these are so interesting topic we can go deeper. My interpretation is this, right? Like, certainly, I think the question is like, for example, Gen Z, one of the biggest challenges basically is overly dominant with digital landscape, right? So much of memes actually digitally native. A lot of the memes you and I grew up with is like usually like something happened in real life, right? Someone took a picture and then they recaptured it. But now the propagation memes actually was born and raised and propagated purely in a digital realm. It's an abstraction of abstraction of abstraction, right? It's no longer, oh, this war happened, and then 50 years later someone wrote a poem and that poem become a meme and then it gets passed down, right? So that's shorthand way of saying it will propagate much, much faster. And I think hopefully for Gen Alpha, if I were to predict, I think the idea meme is kind of probably gonna be completely synthetic, meaning it'd be so detached from reality. Because right now, like even the worst memes, if you look at it, usually there is some kind of a emotional response from the the other users,
Mhm.
right? I may generate like a funny meme about like Pepe you know, the frog, right? That's trying to elicit some emotion, a buy action,
Mhm.
right? Pump and dump action from a user.
Well, that's my question, right?
Right.
There's no doubt it'll be faster, be more native, it's all digital,
Right.
like even now, but in 10 years for the Gen Alpha, right? My question is there value in it?
Mhm.
Is it lasting?
Mhm.
And does it matter, right? What does it mean for memes for us? Like, does it, what can we even take that insight and that like deep understanding to become our product and become the vision of
Right.
our own project and the journey, right? Because I asked you last week,
Mhm.
you specifically said it's not about AI.
Mhm.
Actually, I want to pose as my last question here. I actually think it is about memes
Mhm.
and it has value
Yeah.
and it will be lasting. And it's because of AI.
Mhm.
Because AI really let us not to have to do anything physical or even bound to a job, and the value will be created and content will be created, and you are really living your universal basic income from the society and printing all the money. And you don't need to create much. You just need to be part of whether social status seeking or just part of some community. And you're really not having to do lift any hard labor or like create food.
Mhm.
You are really just part of other humans.
Yeah.
Right? And the manifests of it is the meme that I do think that's not even a, um, a trend or anything, but that would be the eventual outcome, right?
Yeah.
So to me, that's my thesis. I just don't know what are the takeaway and the action item that we can still do.
Yeah.
today.
I think again, this is kind of I'm still in early thinking this, right? Like I think a lot of the content is being generated by AI.
Yeah.
I mean, Mark Zuckerberg already talked about this, right? And I think
Synthetic
synthetic, right?
Mhm.
I mean, that's kind of like high level, like CEOs talking about synthetic data. They're usually meaning about high quality content, right? I think synthetic actually will incorporate a good chunk of memes. Meaning, like when you generate a whole bunch of meme for the larger part of human history, memes are generated with the intent. The consumers, the endpoints are humans consuming these memes, right? But I do think that there is a real likelihood where a whole set of memes are generated, not intended for human consumption, but for other AI scrapers or AI bots to be consumed. So literally, you're talking about like synthetic feeding synthetic, right? So meaning like you may have a whole set of memes. They will never, like 99.99% of those memes will never be viewed by a real human user. But the intended audience is actually other AIs to influence their, right? And I think that's kind of the word. It's both scary, but it's also kind of exciting because, again, exciting not in positive or negative way. It's just like it's unknown.
Well,
Right?
that's why I always measure any of the product
Mhm.
and project action item in months, if
Yeah.
not specifically 3 quarters,
Mhm.
right? So that part I already agree. It's just like much of the internet content now is not written by human, it's copied, it's
Right.
content farm, it's like cheaply produced or generated produced,
Right.
right? So in the future, let's just say memes, right? All the social status to me is the same thing.
Mhm.
It's not about value, meaning whether it will feed me food or like actually give me $1 because like there's revenue of it.
Mhm.
I think all the other revenue and even the excess of food and clothes will not compare to the entertainment and the social belonging
Yeah.
of memes can generate.
Yeah, and I think that's a very deep fundamental question. But I think hopefully in a positive way, it actually be more heterogeneous. The world becomes right because I don't like. I mean, part of it is like the whole whether it being blockchain or democracy or freedom is basically like, hey, you know what? Like let everything push out to the edge, right? But reality is like if you look at the past 100 years, I think it's become more homogenous. For example, you and I both are immigrants by proxy, right? I can remember there was a moment in time if I were to travel to different parts of the world, people dress differently, people eat very differently.
Yeah,
But nowadays, I mean, I can go to like somewhere in Tanzania. They're wearing Nike. They're wearing Abercrombie. I can fly out to Nairobi. They're eating McDonald's, right?
for sure. iPhone and
Right. So is that a good thing or a bad thing? I think it's a good thing in the sense that hey, everyone have equal access. But it's a bad thing in the sense that you basically have like just basically a mirroring of one pattern to another, right? And meme is just that. Meme is an abstraction of a concept, right?
the mirror neuron
Right. So now
to
like
propagate the story.
but again, I kind of say these hey, it's kind of a great time to be alive in this sense, right? I'd rather be worrying about this kind of things versus like let's say like where my grandparents' generation, right? Is there going to be a bomb dropping over the roof, right? I mean, so and
For
all
sure.
things in reality is like, hey, you know what? It's good to be alive to be able to ponder these, right? Now, obviously, the outcomes like like futures yet to be written, and the best way to do it is basically be involved, be curious, and hopefully do the best you can to do something
and
positive.
building part of it.
Right? Yeah.
Well, for the audience still around,
Yeah.
at least you can say the last word about what about the Launchpad for memes, for Harmony, and for Timeless.
I mean, one of the things that we've been kicking back and forth, and again, this is not an announcement today, but like obviously, we're gonna try to hit 5 million wallet users by. By the way, just kind of another kind of a groundbreaking news. We talked to Wallet Connect. As of the last month, I think we're like top 20 active wallets now globally.
Yeah.
Right.
So cheers. Only sparkling beer, water, not wine, but it's worth celebrating.
So the exciting part is like probably in the next month or two, as Wallet Connect is revamping their UI, like if you search Wallet Connect, if we open up Wallet Connect, scan QR code, I think we're moving. Right now we're currently occupied 217 spot. So you literally have to 17 paginations in, you see Timeless. But now I think we're gonna be front page because the 3x4 grid.
Yeah.
We occupy by this number 12 spot.
Exciting.
So that's number one.
Well, you should be naming instead of Timeless to be AA Timeless or something.
Right. But one of the things we're exploring is basically this, right? I know there's some opportunity whether you guys are getting ready for the Perps announcement or launch, right? And we just merged the AA wallet with the EUA wallet, single code base now, right? Harmony is one of the network we do support.
That's the beautiful part.
We do have a discovery, right? And the reason why we're doing podcasts, actually, I think there is a lot of things that we can do. Instead of building friend.tech on top of Twitter, maybe there should be ability to build a podcast on YouTube, right? So those are all the exciting opportunities. And so whatever feature you guys are ready to announce, right? And there might be some additional incentives and rewards for the community, for the users. So the goal is basically for Harmony, let's make a commitment to increase the TVL because I think that's one thing that you guys do care about, right? This now we're talking about brass and tacks. TVL up for Harmony, that's a good thing, right? And for us, we do want to prove that to our partners, our users, our investors that Timeless is a great place to discover the various different interesting
Absolutely.
opportunities and incentives
Absolutely.
within our platform.
All right. On that, let's take that for next week.
All right.
Wow,
Next week.
cheers to it.
Cheers.